strategies. What gets measured gets managed, and what gets measured consistently gets improved systematically. Tracking serves multiple functions. It provides objective data about your performance, creates accountability through visibility, and offers opportunities for pattern recognition and strategic adjustment. The most effective tracking systems are simple, immediate, and visible. Complex tracking systems require too much effort to maintain and often become abandoned projects themselves. Simple tracking systems become automatic habits that provide valuable data without significant investment of time or energy. Optimization protocols are the systematic processes for analyzing performance and improving results over time. Instead of hoping for gradual improvement through general effort, you create specific methods for identifying what works, what doesn't work, and what could work better. This turns personal development into an iterative process of hypothesis testing and systematic refinement. Weekly reviews are one of the most powerful optimization protocols. By regularly examining your performance, identifying patterns, and adjusting strategies, you ensure that you are always moving toward greater effectiveness rather than simply repeating the same actions indefinitely. The beauty of systematic execution is that it removes the burden of constant decision-making from your daily experience. Instead of waking up each day and deciding whether to exercise, what to eat, how to prioritize your time, and when to work on important projects, you follow predetermined systems that have been designed to produce the results you want. This systematic approach is how ordinary people achieve extraordinary results. They do not rely on extraordinary motivation or exceptional circumstances. They rely on systematic design that makes excellence the natural outcome of their structured approach to life and work. Chapter 4. The Psychology of Persistent Action. Understanding why you stop is more important than understanding how to start. Most people focus on initiation strategies without addressing the deeper psychological patterns that cause them to abandon projects, quit challenges, and return to comfortable mediocrity. But persistent action, the ability to continue moving toward your goals regardless of circumstances, obstacles, or emotional states, is a psychological skill that can be developed systematically. The psychology of persistent action is built on 3 core principles: emotional regulation, meaning reinforcement, and identity protection. Each principle addresses a different aspect of the human tendency to abandon important goals when the initial excitement fades and the real work begins. Emotional regulation is the ability to maintain effective action despite difficult emotions. Most people have been taught to wait for positive emotions before taking action. They believe they should feel motivated before exercising, confident before taking risks, passionate before pursuing goals. But emotions are temporary states that change throughout the day based on countless factors beyond your control. Successful people understand that emotions are information, not instructions. They acknowledge how they feel without allowing feelings to determine their actions. They have learned to act from intention rather than emotion, from commitment rather than mood, from identity rather than impulse. Consider the persistence of Thomas Edison during his development of the electric light bulb. Edison faced thousands of failures, countless setbacks, and enormous pressure from critics and investors. He did not persist because he felt consistently motivated or perpetually confident. He persisted because he had developed the psychological skill of emotional regulation, combined with unwavering commitment to his objective. When asked about his failures, Edison famously replied, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." This was not positive thinking or motivational rhetoric. This was emotional regulation in action. The ability to reframe setbacks as information rather than judgment. To view obstacles as problems to be solved rather than reasons to quit. Meaning, reinforcement involves regularly reconnecting with the deeper purpose behind your goals. When you lose sight of why something matters, it becomes easy to abandon when difficulties arise. But when your connection to purpose remains strong, temporary discomfort becomes bearable because it serves a larger vision. Most people set goals based on external desires, money, recognition, status, approval. While these motivations can provide initial energy, they are not sufficient to sustain action through difficult periods. Persistent action requires connection to intrinsic meaning, how achieving this goal will allow you to become who you want to be, contribute what you want to contribute, and create the impact you want to have. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, discovered in the concentration camps that people could endure almost any suffering if they maintained connection to meaning. Those who had compelling reasons to survive, whether reunion with loved ones, completion of important work, or commitment to helping others, were more likely to persist through unimaginable hardship. This principle applies to everyday persistence as well. When you are clear about how your daily actions connect to your larger purpose, temporary discomfort becomes acceptable because it serves something meaningful. When you lose sight of this connection, minor obstacles become insurmountable because they seem pointless. Identity protection is the psychological drive to act consistently with your self-concept. Once you truly identify as the type of person who follows through on commitments, quitting becomes psychologically uncomfortable because it conflicts with your sense of self. This is why identity-based change is so powerful. It creates internal pressure to act consistently rather than relying on external pressure to force action. Identity protection explains why some people seem naturally persistent while others struggle with follow-through. Those who struggle have not yet developed a strong identity around persistence and follow-through. They see themselves as someone who starts and stops, someone who struggles with consistency, someone who has good intentions but poor execution. This identity becomes self-fulfilling as they unconsciously act in ways that confirm their self-concept. But identity is changeable. You can deliberately construct an identity around persistence and follow-through by consistently acting in ways that align with this identity and reinforcing these actions with internal narrative that supports this self-concept. The development of persistent action psychology requires 3 specific practices: emotional distancing, purpose clarification, and identity construction. Each practice addresses one of the core principles and can be developed through deliberate effort over time. Emotional distancing involves creating space between feeling and action. Instead of immediately responding to emotions, you create a pause that allows for conscious choice. This might involve naming the emotion you are experiencing, taking deep breaths to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, or asking yourself, what would someone committed to this goal do right now? Purpose clarification requires regular reflection on why your goals matter to you personally. This goes beyond surface-level desires to deeper values and meaning. You might ask yourself questions like, how will achieving this goal allow me to contribute? Or, what will be possible in my life if I follow through on this commitment? Or, who will I become through the process of pursuing this objective? Identity construction involves deliberately choosing how you see yourself and reinforcing this identity through language and action. Instead of saying, I'm trying to become more consistent, you say, I am someone who follows through on commitments. Instead of focusing on past failures, you focus on current choices that align with your desired identity. The psychology of persistent action is not about forcing yourself to continue when every fiber of your being wants to quit. It is about developing the internal architecture that makes continuation feel natural and quitting feel foreign. It is about aligning your emotions, meaning, and identity so that persistent action becomes the expression of who you are rather than something you force yourself to do. Chapter 5, the compound effect of daily decision. Most people dramatically overestimate what they can accomplish in a day and dramatically underestimate what they can accomplish in a year. This misunderstanding leads to cycles of unrealistic daily expectations, followed by disappointment, discouragement, and abandonment of important goals. But the most successful people understand something different. That extraordinary results come not from extraordinary efforts, but from ordinary efforts repeated consistently over time. This is the compound effect of daily decisions, the mathematical reality that small actions, when repeated consistently, create results that seem impossibly large compared to the size of the individual actions. Just as compound interest turns small financial investments into large fortunes over time, compound behavior turns small daily habits into transformative life changes. Consider the story of Darren Hardy, who documented his understanding of this principle in his book, The Compound Effect. Hardy observed that people who achieve exceptional results in any field are not necessarily more talented, more intelligent, or more fortunate than others. They simply make slightly better decisions more consistently over longer periods of time. The difference between someone who exercises for 30 minutes 3 times per week and someone who doesn't exercise at all seems minimal on any given day. But over the course of a year, the exerciser will have invested 78 hours in physical fitness, while the non-exerciser will have invested 0. Over 5 years, the difference becomes 390 hours versus 0. Over 10 years, it becomes 780 hours versus 0. These hours compound not just in quantity, but in quality. Each workout makes the next workout slightly easier. Each healthy choice makes the next healthy choice slightly more natural. Each investment in fitness creates physical and mental benefits that make all other areas of life more effective. The person who exercises regularly doesn't just have a different body. They have different energy, different confidence, different decision-making capacity, different resilience. This same principle applies to every area of life. Reading for 30 minutes per day seems insignificant compared to the demands of daily life. But 30 minutes per day equals roughly 25 books per year, 125 books over 5 years, 250 books over 10 years. A person who reads consistently for a decade doesn't just know more information, they think differently, make better decisions, see patterns others miss, and approach problems with greater wisdom and perspective. The compound effect works in both directions. Just as positive decisions compound to create extraordinary results, negative decisions compound to create extraordinary problems. The person who consistently makes poor financial choices doesn't just end up broke. They end up with damaged credit, limited options, chronic stress, and reduced life opportunities. The person who consistently avoids difficult conversations doesn't just have temporary discomfort, they develop weak relationships, unresolved conflicts, and diminished influence. Understanding the compound effect changes how you think about daily decisions. Instead of evaluating choices based only on their immediate consequences, you begin to consider their long-term trajectory. Instead of asking, "What will this decision cost me today?" you ask, "Where will this decision take me if I repeat it consistently over time?" This long-term perspective is what allowed Warren Buffett to become one of the wealthiest people in the world. Buffett understood that wealth creation is not about making spectacular investments, but about making consistently good investments over long periods of time. His approach to investing mirrors his approach to life. Focus on fundamentals, think long-term, and allow compound effects to create extraordinary results. The challenge with the compound effect is that it requires faith in delayed gratification. The benefits of good decisions are often invisible in the short term, while the costs of bad decisions are often delayed until they become overwhelming. This creates a psychological trap where it's easy to make poor choices because their consequences seem distant and abstract. Successful people overcome this challenge by developing what researchers call future self-continuity, the ability to feel connected to and motivated by their future selves. They make decisions not just based on how they feel today, but based on how their future selves will be affected by today's choices. One powerful practice for developing future self-continuity is future self-visualization. Regularly spend time imagining yourself 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years from now. Visualize not just what you want to have accomplished, but who you want to have become. Feel the emotions of your future self looking back on the decisions you are making today. This creates emotional connection to long-term consequences and makes delayed gratification feel more immediate and compelling. Another practice is tracking compound metrics rather than just outcome metrics. Instead of only tracking your weight if you want to lose weight, track how many healthy meals you eat each week. Instead of only tracking your income if you want to build wealth, track how many valuable skills you develop each month. Instead of only tracking your business results if you want to build a company, track how many productive actions you take each day. Compound metrics help you see progress even when outcome metrics haven't changed yet. They provide motivation during the inevitable periods when your efforts haven't yet produced visible results, but are building the foundation for future success. The compound effect also explains why consistency matters more than intensity. The person who exercises intensely for 2 weeks, then stops, will see their fitness quickly return to baseline. The person who exercises moderately but consistently for months will see steady improvement that continues to build over time. Intensity without consistency produces temporary results. Consistency without intensity produces permanent transformation. This principle applies to skill development, relationship building, wealth creation, and personal growth. The most successful musicians practice regularly rather than sporadically. The most successful entrepreneurs work on their businesses consistently rather than in bursts. The most successful investors contribute regularly rather than making occasional large investments. The compound effect of daily decisions means that you have more control over your future than you might realize. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control what happens through you. You cannot control external circumstances, but you can control your response to those circumstances. And your responses, repeated consistently over time, shape not just your results, but your character, your capabilities, and your opportunities. Chapter 6, The Science of Momentum Creation. Momentum is not an accident. It is not luck, circumstance, or divine favor. Momentum is a psychological and physical phenomenon that follows predictable patterns and can be deliberately created through systematic action. Understanding the science of momentum creation gives you the ability to generate forward progress even when you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or directionless. Momentum operates according to Newton's first law of motion. Objects at rest tend to stay at rest, while objects in motion tend to stay in motion. This physical principle has psychological equivalents that govern human behavior and achievement. When you are in a state of inaction, every action feels difficult because you must overcome the inertia of stillness. When you are in a state of action, continued action feels natural because you are already in motion. This is why the hardest part of any project is starting. Once you begin, each subsequent action becomes easier because you are no longer overcoming inertia. You are maintaining momentum. The first workout is harder than the 10th. The first sales call is harder than the 20th. The first page of writing is harder than the 15th. But momentum is more than just the absence of inertia. Momentum creates its own energy. When you are moving toward your goals, you develop confidence from progress, clarity from action, and motivation from results. These psychological benefits make continued action feel natural rather than forced. You enter what psychologists call a flow state, where effort feels effortless and progress feels inevitable. The science of momentum creation involves 3 key components: activation energy, feedback loops, and cumulative advantage. Each component plays a specific role in generating and maintaining forward progress. Activation energy is the initial effort required to overcome inertia and begin taking action. Just as chemical reactions require activation energy to begin, behavioral change requires initial effort to overcome the psychological resistance to new behaviors. The key to momentum creation is reducing activation energy to its absolute minimum while still producing meaningful action. This principle explains why starting with small actions is more effective than attempting large changes. If you want to develop a writing habit, it's better to commit to writing 1 sentence per day than to commit to writing for 2 hours per day. 1 sentence requires minimal activation energy and can be completed regardless of circumstances, mood, or available time. 2 hours require significant activation energy and will be abandoned when life becomes busy or challenging. The goal of minimal activation energy is not to achieve minimal results, but to create consistent action that can be gradually expanded. Once you are writing 1 sentence per day consistently, increasing to 1 paragraph feels natural. Once you are writing 1 paragraph consistently, increasing to 1 page feels achievable. The momentum created by consistent small actions makes larger actions feel possible rather than overwhelming. Feedback loops are the mechanisms that provide information about your progress and adjust your motivation based on results. Positive feedback loops increase motivation and energy by highlighting progress and success. Negative feedback loops decrease motivation and energy by focusing attention on gaps and failures. Creating positive feedback loops requires deliberately designing systems that highlight progress and celebrate advancement. This might involve tracking daily actions rather than just long-term outcomes, measuring input metrics rather than just output metrics, or recognizing effort rather than just achievement. For example, if you are building a business, you might track how many potential customers you contact each day rather than just how much revenue you generate each month. Daily contact metrics provide immediate feedback and are entirely within your control, while monthly revenue metrics are delayed and influenced by factors beyond your control. Immediate controllable feedback creates positive momentum, while delayed uncontrollable feedback can destroy momentum even when you are taking effective actions. Cumulative advantage is the phenomenon where success creates conditions that make additional success more likely. Each achievement builds your capabilities, confidence, and resources in ways that make future achievements easier. This creates an accelerating cycle where progress compounds and momentum increases over time. Malcolm Gladwell described this phenomenon as the Matthew effect, named after the biblical passage that states, "To those who have, more will be given." In practical terms, this means that early successes, even small ones, create advantages that lead to larger successes, which create even greater advantages. A writer who publishes 1 successful article gains credibility that makes it easier to publish additional articles. An entrepreneur who completes 1 successful project gains experience and connections that make it easier to complete additional projects. An athlete who wins 1 competition gains confidence and recognition that make it easier to win additional competitions. The key to leveraging cumulative advantage is recognizing that early successes do not need to be large to be valuable. Small successes create real advantages that can be compounded over time. This is why it's important to celebrate progress even when it seems insignificant compared to your ultimate goals. Creating momentum requires a strategic approach that addresses all 3 components systematically. You must design your initial actions to require minimal activation energy, create feedback systems that highlight progress and maintain motivation, and recognize how each success builds advantages for future success. The momentum creation process begins with what I call ridiculously easy first steps. These are actions so simple that they require almost no motivation, planning, or special circumstances to complete. The goal is not to achieve significant results immediately, but to establish the pattern of taking action consistently. Once you have established consistent action, you can gradually increase the scope and intensity of your efforts while maintaining the same level of consistency. This allows momentum to build naturally without overwhelming your capacity or motivation. Momentum also requires what researchers call implementation intentions, specific plans for when, where, and how you will take action. Instead of relying on motivation or memory to prompt action, You create automatic triggers that initiate behavior regardless of your emotional state or external circumstances. For example, instead of deciding, I will exercise more, you create an implementation intention. I will exercise for 15 minutes in my living room immediately after drinking my morning coffee. This specific plan reduces activation energy by eliminating decision-making and creates a clear trigger that prompts action automatically. The science of momentum creation reveals that you have more control over your progress than you might believe. Momentum is not something that happens to you, it is something you create through deliberate action and systematic design. By understanding and applying these principles, you can generate forward progress even in challenging circumstances and accelerate your movement toward any goal you choose to pursue. Chapter 7, the elimination of energy leaks. Energy is your most valuable resource. More than time, more than money, more than talent, your available energy determines your capacity to think clearly, make good decisions, take effective action, and persist through challenges. Yet most people unconsciously allow their energy to drain away through countless small leaks that individually seem insignificant but collectively create a state of chronic depletion that makes ambitious goals feel impossible. The elimination of energy leaks is not about working harder or sleeping less. It is about systematically identifying and sealing the hidden drains on your mental, emotional, and physical energy so that you have maximum capacity available for your most important objectives. When you plug these leaks, you don't just conserve energy, you redirect it toward activities that create momentum and results. Energy leaks occur in 4 primary categories: decision fatigue, attention fragmentation, emotional drainage, and physical depletion. Each category represents a different type of energy loss that can be systematically addressed through specific strategies and systems. Decision fatigue is the deteriorating quality of decisions made after a long session of decision making. Every decision you make throughout the day, from what to wear to what to eat to how to respond to emails, depletes your mental energy and reduces your capacity for important decisions later. This is why many successful people develop strict routines and protocols that eliminate unnecessary decisions from their daily experience. Steve Jobs famously wore the same style of clothing every day to eliminate the energy drain of deciding what to wear. Barack Obama had his staff reduce all decisions to binary choices whenever possible, understanding that the presidency required him to preserve mental energy for the most critical decisions. These leaders understood that decision fatigue is not a sign of weakness, but a biological reality that can be managed through systematic design. The elimination of decision fatigue requires creating automatic systems for recurring choices and reserving conscious decision-making for truly important matters. This might involve meal planning to eliminate daily food decisions, creating morning and evening routines to eliminate scheduling decisions, or developing templates and checklists to eliminate process decisions. Attention fragmentation occurs when your focus is constantly interrupted by notifications, requests, distractions, and competing priorities. The human brain is not designed for multitasking. It is designed for sustained focus on single objectives. When attention is fragmented, you lose not just the time spent on distractions, but also the time required to refocus on important tasks after each interruption. Research by Dr. Sophie Leroy at the University of Washington shows that when you switch from task A to task B, part of your attention remains stuck on task A. She calls this attention residue, and it reduces your cognitive performance on task B until you have time to fully transition your focus. The more frequently you switch tasks, the more attention residue accumulates and the less effective you become at any single task. The elimination of attention fragmentation requires creating boundaries around your focus and protecting concentrated work time from interruption. This might involve turning off notifications during deep work sessions, batching similar tasks together to minimize context switching, or creating physical environments that support sustained concentration. Emotional drainage happens when you allow toxic relationships, unresolved conflicts, or negative environments to consume your emotional energy. Emotions are not separate from cognitive performance. They directly affect your ability to think clearly, make good decisions, and take effective action. When your emotional energy is depleted by draining people or situations, you have less capacity available for pursuing your goals. The elimination of emotional drainage requires setting boundaries with energy-draining people, resolving conflicts rather than avoiding them, and creating positive emotional inputs that refuel rather than deplete your emotional reserves. This is not about avoiding all negative emotions, but about preventing unnecessary emotional drain that serves no productive purpose. Physical depletion occurs when poor sleep, inadequate nutrition, lack of exercise, or chronic stress undermines your body's ability to support high-level cognitive and emotional performance. Your brain consumes approximately 20% of your total energy, and when your body is not functioning optimally, your mental performance suffers dramatically. The elimination of physical depletion requires treating your body as the foundation for all other performance. This means prioritizing sleep quality over sleep quantity, choosing foods that stabilize rather than spike blood sugar, incorporating movement that energizes rather than exhausts, and managing stress through deliberate recovery practices. The systematic elimination of energy leaks begins with an energy audit, a careful examination of how you currently spend your mental, emotional, and physical energy throughout a typical day. For 1 week, track when you feel energized versus depleted, what activities or people drain your energy, and what patterns emerge in your energy levels. This audit will reveal specific leaks that you can address systematically. You might discover that checking social media first thing in the morning fragments your attention for hours. You might notice that certain people consistently leave you feeling drained after interactions. You might realize that poor sleep quality affects your decision-making capacity throughout the following day. Once you have identified your primary energy leaks, you can design specific systems to address each one. For decision fatigue, create templates, routines, and automated systems. For attention fragmentation, establish boundaries, eliminate distractions, and protect focused time. For emotional drainage, set boundaries, resolve conflicts, and curate positive influences. For physical depletion, optimize sleep, nutrition, movement, and recovery. The goal is not to eliminate all demands on your energy, but to ensure that your energy is invested in activities that align with your priorities and produce meaningful results. Energy well spent creates momentum, confidence, and additional energy. Energy poorly spent creates depletion, frustration, and reduced capacity. Consider the case of Cal Newport, a computer science professor who has written multiple books, maintains a popular blog, conducts cutting-edge research, and teaches full-time while maintaining work-life balance. Newport accomplishes this not through superhuman energy, but through systematic elimination of energy leaks. He batches similar tasks, eliminates social media, protects deep work time, and creates clear boundaries between work and personal life. Newport's productivity is not the result of working more hours, but of investing his available energy more strategically. By eliminating energy leaks, he has maximum cognitive capacity available for his most important work, allowing him to produce exceptional results without chronic stress or burnout. The elimination of energy leaks also requires understanding the difference between energy investment and energy expenditure. Energy investment involves activities that may require immediate effort but create long-term capacity and results. Energy expenditure involves activities that consume energy without creating lasting value or capability. Exercise is energy investment. It requires immediate effort but creates long-term energy health and cognitive capacity. Mindless scrolling is energy expenditure. It consumes immediate energy without creating any lasting value. Learning new skills is energy investment. It requires effort but expands your capabilities and opportunities. Engaging in gossip is energy expenditure. It drains emotional energy without creating positive outcome. The most successful people are strategic about energy investment versus energy expenditure. They willingly invest energy in activities that build long-term capacity while ruthlessly eliminating activities that provide only immediate gratification or distraction. Chapter 8. The Architecture of Unshakable Focus. In an age of infinite distraction, the ability to focus deeply on important work has become both more valuable and more rare. Those who can maintain sustained attention on their highest priorities while filtering out irrelevant information possess an almost unfair advantage in any field. Focus is not just a cognitive skill, it is the foundation upon which all other capabilities are built. The architecture of unshakable focus is not about willpower or natural talent. It is about creating systems, environments, and practices that make deep focus the path of least resistance, while making distraction difficult and unappealing. When focus is systematically engineered rather than hoped for, it becomes reliable and sustainable. Focus operates on 3 levels: external focus, managing your environment; internal focus, managing your thoughts; and temporal focus, managing your time. Each level requires specific strategies and systems to optimize effectively. External focus involves designing your physical and digital environment to support sustained attention and eliminate unnecessary distractions. Your environment is constantly competing for your attention through visual cues, auditory interruptions, and accessibility of distracting options. By deliberately designing your environment, you can reduce the cognitive effort required to maintain focus. The principle of environmental design for focus is simple. Make focused work easy and distracted behavior difficult. This might involve creating a dedicated workspace that contains only tools necessary for important work, using apps that block distracting websites during focus sessions, or placing your phone in another room during deep work periods. Research by Dr. Adam Gazzaley at UC San Francisco shows that our brains have a limited capacity for filtering irrelevant information. When our environment contains multiple attention-grabbing stimuli, our cognitive resources are depleted by the constant effort to ignore distractions, leaving less capacity available for actual work. Environmental design reduces this cognitive load by eliminating distractions at the source rather than requiring constant mental effort to ignore them. Internal focus involves managing your thoughts, emotions, and internal distractions that can disrupt concentration even in perfectly designed environments. Your mind naturally generates thoughts, worries, ideas, and impulses throughout the day, and learning to acknowledge these mental events without being controlled by them is essential for sustained focus. The development of internal focus requires what psychologists call metacognitive awareness, the ability to observe your own thinking processes without being swept away by every thought that arises. This skill can be developed through mindfulness practices, focused breathing exercises, and deliberate attention training. One powerful technique for developing internal focus is the noting practice from meditation traditions. When you notice your mind wandering during focused work, simply note thinking or distraction and gently return your attention to the task at hand. This practice develops the mental muscle of recognizing distraction without judgment and redirecting attention without frustration. Temporal focus involves structuring your time to maximize periods of deep concentration while accommodating the natural rhythms of attention and energy throughout the day. Your cognitive capacity fluctuates predictably based on circadian rhythms, blood sugar levels, and accumulated mental fatigue. By aligning your most important work with your peak attention periods, you can accomplish more in less time with higher quality results. Most people experience peak cognitive performance during the first few hours after waking, before decision fatigue and accumulated distractions begin to erode mental clarity. This makes early morning an ideal time for deep work that requires creativity, problem solving, or complex thinking. Less cognitively demanding tasks like email, administrative work, and routine communications can be scheduled during lower energy periods. The architecture of unshakable focus also requires understanding the difference between focused work and busy work. Focused work involves sustained attention on cognitively demanding tasks that create significant value and move you toward important objectives. Busy work involves activity that feels productive but does not require deep thinking or create meaningful progress. Many people confuse busy work with focused work and wonder why they feel constantly busy but never make significant progress on important goals. They spend their peak cognitive hours on email meetings and administrative tasks, then attempt focused work when their mental energy is depleted. This backwards approach makes deep work feel impossible and important projects seem overwhelming. The solution is to protect your peak cognitive hours for your most important work and delegate or batch less important activities during lower energy periods. This might require saying no to morning meetings, checking email only at predetermined times, or rescheduling routine tasks to accommodate deep work sessions. Creating unshakable focus also requires developing what researchers call cognitive endurance, the ability to maintain high-quality attention for extended periods without fatigue or degradation in performance. Like physical endurance, cognitive endurance can be systematically developed through progressive training and recovery. The Pomodoro technique, developed by Francesco Cirillo, is one effective method for building cognitive endurance. This technique involves working in focused 25-minute sessions, followed by 5-minute breaks, with longer breaks after every 4 sessions. The regular breaks prevent mental fatigue, while the focused sessions train your ability to maintain sustained attention. As your cognitive endurance improves, you can gradually extend your focused work sessions while maintaining the same level of concentration quality. Some people eventually develop the ability to work in focused 90-minute or even 3-hour blocks without significant mental fatigue. The architecture of unshakable focus requires consistent maintenance and continuous optimization. Your attention is under constant assault from technological, social, and environmental distractions that are specifically designed to capture and fragment your focus. Maintaining deep focus requires ongoing vigilance and systematic defense against these attention thieves. Regular digital detoxes, attention training exercises, and environment audits help maintain the systems that support sustained focus. Like physical fitness, cognitive fitness requires consistent practice and cannot be achieved through occasional intense efforts. The payoff for developing unshakable focus extends far beyond productivity improvements. Deep focus creates a psychological state of flow where work feels effortless, time seems to disappear, and performance reaches peak levels. This flow state is intrinsically rewarding and creates a positive feedback loop where focused work becomes enjoyable rather than effortful. When you can focus deeply and consistently, you gain the ability to tackle complex problems, create original work, and make meaningful progress on ambitious goals. In a world where most people are chronically distracted, the ability to focus deeply becomes a significant competitive advantage in any field. Chapter 9. The Power of Strategic Constraints. Freedom without structure is paralysis. Infinite options without clear priorities lead to scattered effort and mediocre results. The most successful people understand that constraints are not limitations, but tools for focusing energy and creating breakthrough performance. Strategic constraints deliberately limit your options to channel your efforts toward maximum impact activities. This principle runs counter to the common belief that more options create better outcomes. Research in behavioral psychology consistently shows that too many choices create decision paralysis, reduce satisfaction with chosen options, and increase regret about unchosen alternatives. The paradox of choice, as psychologist Barry Schwartz calls it, demonstrates that constraints often improve rather than limit performance. Consider the example of Dr. Seuss, who wrote Green Eggs and Ham using only 50 different words because of a bet with his publisher. This extreme constraint forced him to be extraordinarily creative within narrow boundaries, resulting in one of the best-seller children's books of all time. The limitation didn't reduce the quality of his work, it focused his creativity and produced a masterpiece. Strategic constraints work by eliminating decision fatigue, forcing creative solutions and concentrating effort on high-impact activities. When you deliberately limit your options, you reduce the cognitive load of constant decision-making and channel your energy toward execution rather than endless deliberation. The power of strategic constraints can be applied to every area of life and work. In business, successful entrepreneurs often focus on a single product or service until they achieve mastery, rather than trying to offer everything to everyone. In fitness, effective programs focus on a few key exercises performed consistently rather than constantly changing routines. In learning, deep expertise comes from sustained focus on one domain rather than surface-level exploration of many domains. Warren Buffett exemplifies the power of strategic constraints in investing. Despite having virtually unlimited investment options, Buffett constrains himself to investing only in businesses he understands, with strong competitive advantages, run by honest management, available at reasonable prices. These constraints eliminate thousands of potential investments, but ensure that his limited attention is focused on opportunities with the highest probability of success. Buffett's approach demonstrates that strategic constraints are not about limiting yourself, but about choosing your limitations deliberately rather than allowing them to be imposed by circumstances, emotions, or other people's agendas. When you choose your constraints strategically, they become tools for optimization rather than barriers to success. The implementation of strategic constraints requires answering three fundamental questions. What will you focus on? What will you ignore? What will you eliminate? Each question serves a specific purpose in creating powerful constraints that enhance rather than limit your performance. What will you focus on identifies your highest leverage activities and core priorities. This goes beyond general goal setting to identify specific activities that create disproportionate results. The goal is not to do more things, but to identify the few things that matter most and commit to doing them exceptionally well. Amazon's early focus provides an excellent example. When Jeff Bezos started Amazon, he could have tried to sell everything online immediately. Instead, he strategically constrained the business to selling only books. This constraint allowed Amazon to perfect their systems, build customer loyalty, and establish market dominance in one category before expanding to others. The constraint didn't limit Amazon's potential. It focused their efforts during the crucial early stages. What will you ignore identifies activities, opportunities, and distractions that you will deliberately choose not to pursue, even if they seem valuable or interesting. This is often more difficult than choosing what to focus on, because it requires saying no to good opportunities in order to say yes to great opportunities. Steve Jobs was famous for his philosophy of saying no to hundreds of good ideas in order to focus on a few great ones. When he returned to Apple in 1997, he eliminated dozens of products and projects to focus the company's attention on a small number of revolutionary products. This strategic constraint helped Apple move from near bankruptcy to becoming the world's most valuable company. What will you eliminate identifies current activities, commitments, and habits that drain energy without creating proportionate value. This is about stopping rather than starting, about subtraction rather than addition. Most people focus on what they need to add to their lives without considering what they need to remove. The elimination process requires honest assessment of how you currently spend your time and energy. Many activities continue simply because they have always been done, not because they serve current priorities. Regular elimination of outdated activities frees up capacity for more important pursuits. Strategic constraints also extend to decision-making processes, work environments, and daily routines. By creating constraints around these areas, you can reduce mental fatigue and increase the consistency of your performance. Decision-making constraints might involve creating clear criteria for evaluating opportunities, setting predetermined limits on time spent making routine decisions, or establishing automatic rules for common situations. These constraints eliminate the need to make the same decisions repeatedly and ensure that your choices align with your priorities. Environmental constraints involve designing your physical and digital spaces to support focused work while limiting access to distracting alternatives. This might mean working in locations without internet access, using apps that block distracting websites, or creating physical barriers between yourself and time-wasting activities. Routine constraints involve establishing consistent patterns for important activities rather than relying on motivation or circumstances to determine when and how you work on priorities. Successful writers often establish specific times and places for writing, regardless of inspiration or mood. Successful entrepreneurs often block time for strategic thinking rather than hoping to find time when schedules allow. The key to effective strategic constraints is making them specific, measurable, and meaningful to your particular situation and goals. Vague constraints like focus more or eliminate distractions lack the specificity needed to guide behavior consistently. Effective constraints are concrete enough to eliminate ambiguity and meaningful enough to motivate adherence. Strategic constraints require regular review and adjustment as circumstances change and goals evolve. Constraints that served you well at one stage of development may become barriers at another stage. The goal is not to create permanent limitations, but to use constraints as tools for optimization that can be modified when they no longer serve their purpose. The power of strategic constraints lies in their ability to transform overwhelming complexity into manageable simplicity. By deliberately choosing your limitations, you create clarity about what matters most and channel your finite energy toward maximum impact activities. In a world of infinite options and constant distractions, strategic constraints become your competitive advantage. Chapter 10, The Mastery of Recovery and Renewal. High performance is not about constant effort. It is about strategic oscillation between periods of intense focus and periods of deliberate recovery. Most people understand the importance of hard work, but underestimate the critical role of recovery in sustaining peak performance over time. Without systematic recovery, even the most ambitious and dedicated individuals eventually experience burnout, decreased performance, and diminished results. The mastery of recovery and renewal is based on understanding that rest is not the absence of activity, but the presence of restorative activity. Effective recovery actively rebuilds your physical energy, mental clarity, and emotional resilience rather than simply providing temporary relief from work demands. This principle is clearly demonstrated in elite athletics, where training programs are designed around cycles of stress and recovery. Athletes who train intensely without adequate recovery actually decrease their performance and increase their risk of injury. The athletes who achieve peak performance understand that recovery is not time away from training. It is an essential component of training that enables higher levels of performance. The same principle applies to cognitive and creative work. Research by Dr. Nathaniel Kleitman shows that our brains operate in natural cycles of alertness and fatigue throughout the day. Working against these natural rhythms by forcing continuous effort leads to diminishing returns and eventual exhaustion. Working with these rhythms by alternating focused effort with strategic recovery leads to sustained high performance. Recovery operates on multiple timescales: micro recovery, minutes; daily recovery, hours; weekly recovery, days; and seasonal recovery, weeks or months. Each timescale serves a different function in maintaining and enhancing performance capacity. Micro recovery involves brief breaks during focused work sessions that prevent mental fatigue and maintain concentration quality. These breaks might involve breathing exercises, brief walks, or simply closing your eyes for a few minutes. The key is to interrupt cognitive effort before fatigue accumulates rather than waiting until exhaustion forces a break. The ultradian rhythm research shows that our bodies naturally cycle through periods of alertness and fatigue approximately every 90-120 minutes. Working with these cycles by taking brief breaks every 90 minutes can maintain higher quality focus throughout the day compared to working for longer periods without breaks. Daily recovery involves activities at the end of each day that help transition from work mode to rest mode and prepare your mind and body for restorative sleep. This might include physical exercise, meditation, reading, or engaging in hobbies that provide mental stimulation different from work demands. The quality of daily recovery directly affects the quality of the following day's performance. Poor evening recovery leads to decreased cognitive capacity, emotional regulation, and physical energy the next day. Effective evening recovery enhances all these capacities and creates positive momentum for sustained high performance. Weekly recovery involves longer periods of restoration that allow for deeper renewal of energy and perspective. This might include extended time in nature, engaging in completely different activities from your normal work, or simply having unstructured time for reflection and spontaneous activity. The concept of Sabbath, found in many religious traditions, recognizes the human need for regular periods of complete rest from productive activity. Modern research validates this ancient wisdom, showing that people who take complete breaks from work one day per week demonstrate higher creativity, better problem solving, and greater life satisfaction. Seasonal recovery involves longer breaks that allow for significant renewal and perspective taking. This might include vacations, sabbaticals, or extended periods focused on learning and growth rather than production. These longer recovery periods prevent long-term burnout and often lead to breakthrough insights and renewed motivation. The mastery of recovery requires understanding that different types of work create different types of fatigue and require different types of recovery. Physical work requires physical rest. Mental work requires mental restoration. Emotional work requires emotional renewal. Creative work requires creative rejuvenation. Mental fatigue, caused by sustained cognitive effort, is best recovered through activities that engage different parts of the brain or provide complete mental rest. This might include physical exercise, meditation, or engaging with nature. Activities that require continued mental effort, such as watching television or browsing social media, do not provide genuine mental recovery, even though they may feel relaxing. Emotional fatigue, caused by interpersonal stress or emotional labor, is best recovered through activities that provide emotional nourishment and social connection with supportive people. This might include spending time with loved ones, engaging in meaningful conversations, or participating in activities that create positive emotions. Creative fatigue, caused by sustained original thinking and problem solving, is best recovered through activities that provide novel inputs and perspectives. This might include reading, experiencing art, traveling, or engaging in playful activities that stimulate different types of thinking. The strategic use of recovery also involves understanding that some activities provide recovery in one dimension while building capacity in another. Physical exercise, for example, provides mental recovery while building physical capacity. Learning new skills provides creative stimulation while offering a break from routine work demand. Effective recovery also requires creating clear boundaries between work and rest. In an always connected world, the temptation to check email, take calls, or think about work during recovery periods undermines the restorative benefits of rest. True recovery requires mental and emotional disengagement from work demands, not just physical absence from the workplace. The technology tools that enable unprecedented productivity also create unprecedented challenges for recovery. Smartphones, laptops, and constant connectivity make it possible to work anywhere at any time, but they also make it difficult to fully disengage and recover. Mastering recovery in the modern world requires deliberate boundaries around technology use during rest periods. The mastery of recovery and renewal ultimately enables what researchers call sustainable high performance, the ability to maintain peak effectiveness over extended periods without burnout or degradation in quality. This is the difference between sprinting and marathon running in your career and life. People who master recovery don't just avoid burnout, they actually increase their capacity over time. Like athletes who use strategic training and recovery to achieve new personal bests, you can use strategic work and recovery to achieve new levels of performance in your professional and personal life. The implementation of systematic recovery requires the same level of planning and commitment as the implementation of systematic work habits. Recovery is not something that happens automatically when you stop working. It is something that must be deliberately designed and consistently practiced. Conclusion: the transformation protocol. You now possess the complete blueprint for transforming ambitious paralysis into unstoppable momentum. These are not theories or motivational concepts, but proven systems that have been tested by thousands of individuals who have successfully bridged the gap between vision and execution. The principles you have learned represent the distilled wisdom of high achievers across centuries and cultures. But knowledge without application remains potential, not power. Understanding these principles intellectually is only the first step. The transformation you seek requires systematic implementation of these ideas until they become automatic patterns that govern your daily behavior without conscious effort. The transformation protocol begins with a single decision: the decision to stop explaining your current results and start engineering better ones. This decision marks the end of seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and the beginning of seeing yourself as the architect of your future. It is the moment when you take full responsibility for the gap between your potential and your performance. Your transformation will not happen overnight, but it will begin immediately. Every principle you implement, every system you design, every old pattern you interrupt creates momentum toward the person you are becoming. The compound effect of these small changes will produce results that seem impossibly large compared to the size of the individual action. The path forward is clear. Choose one principle from this blueprint and implement it completely before moving to the next. Most people try to change everything at once and end up changing nothing permanently. Successful people change one thing completely, allow it to become automatic, then build additional changes on that foundation. Start with identity transformation. Every morning for the next 30 days, spend 5 minutes declaring who you are becoming rather than who you have been. Speak your new identity aloud with conviction and emotion. Act throughout the day as the person you declared yourself to be that morning. This single practice will begin rewiring your subconscious programming and creating new neural pathways that support execution rather than hesitation. While implementing identity transformation, begin designing your environment for automatic execution. Remove friction from important activities and add friction to distracting activities. Create visual cues that prompt good decisions and eliminate visual cues that prompt poor decisions. Make your environment an ally in your transformation rather than an obstacle. After 30 days of consistent identity work and environmental design, add systematic tracking of your most important behaviors. Measure the inputs you control rather than just the outputs you hope for. Track daily actions rather than just weekly results. This tracking will provide the feedback necessary to maintain momentum and adjust your approach based on real data rather than subjective feeling. Continue this process of implementing one principle completely before adding the next until you have built a comprehensive system that supports sustained high performance in every area of your life. This systematic approach ensures that each change becomes permanent before additional changes are introduced. The transformation protocol also requires understanding that setbacks are not failures but information. You will have days when you revert to old patterns, when motivation fails, when circumstances disrupt your systems. These experiences are not evidence that transformation is impossible, but opportunities to strengthen your systems and deepen your commitment. Each time you return to your principles after a setback, you build what psychologists call psychological resilience, the ability to bounce back from difficulties stronger than before. This resilience becomes one of your greatest assets as you pursue increasingly ambitious goals throughout your life. Your transformation will also inspire transformation in others. As you become living proof that ambitious paralysis can be overcome, people around you will begin asking how you changed so dramatically. You will have the opportunity to share these principles with others who struggle with the same challenges you once faced. This creates a positive cycle where your growth contributes to the growth of others. The ultimate goal of this transformation is not just personal success, but personal fulfillment. When you can consistently execute on your highest priorities, you gain the deep satisfaction that comes from living in alignment with your values and potential. You no longer experience the chronic frustration of knowing what you should do, but not doing it. You become integrated. Your actions match your intentions, your behavior reflects your beliefs. Your daily life expresses your deepest value. This integration creates what researchers call eudaimonia, a deep sense of well-being that comes not from external achievements, but from the process of becoming who you are meant to be. It is the satisfaction of knowing that you are using your gifts fully, contributing your unique value to the world, and leaving nothing important undone. The journey from ambitious paralysis to unstoppable momentum is not easy, but it is entirely achievable. Thousands of people have made this transformation using these exact principles. Some started with more advantages, others with more challenges, but all succeeded by applying these systems consistently over time. Your background, your past failures, your current circumstances do not determine your future potential. Your willingness to implement these principles consistently determines everything. The power to transform your life exists within you right now. The only question is whether you will use it. The time for explanation is over. The time for implementation has begun. Choose your first principle. Create your first system. Take your first action and begin the most important project you will ever undertake. The project of becoming who you were meant to be. Your future self is waiting. They have been waiting your entire life for this moment when you stop preparing to change and start changing. They are counting on you to build the bridge between where you are and where they exist. That bridge is built one decision at a time, one action at a time, one day at a time. Begin now. Begin today. Begin with whatever principle calls to you most strongly. The ambitious life you have always envisioned is not a fantasy, it is a blueprint, and you now have the tools to build it.